Well, Australia's ended nearly 3 decades of uninterrupted growth as the Treasurer concedes the economy is in recession. Another High Court challenge has been flagged against the Queensland government over those border closures, and shocking scenes emerge from the United States as riots enter a 9th day. Liberal MP Craig Kelly joins me now. Good to see you, Craig. This recession that the Treasurer referred to today, Josh Frydenberg, how will that affect the fundamental monetary policies in this country? What I mean by that is it likely to affect our AAA credit rating, and what will it mean for the budget as we go forward?
Well, firstly, Gleeso, we've had a 0.3% decline in growth. And remember, that's the March quarter, so we're talking about the 1st of January through to the 30th of March. And comparing that to the rest of the world, we've done pretty darn well. When you look at Europe, you're talking about across the European Union, an average of about 3.8. So you're talking a decline in Europe about 10 times higher in GDP, or 10 times bigger decline in GDP than what we see in Australia. Even Canada, an economy very similar to ours, resources based, has also had a 2.2% decline. So if we look at that first quarter, it's been actually, compared to the rest of the world, we've done outstandingly well. But the concern, Gleeso, is the next quarter, with all the restrictions that we've had, that will also likely to see us having another quarter of negative growth, and that is your technical definition of a recession. Now, how that will affect us with monetary policy in the budget, obviously it's going to result in a decline in revenue flowing into the Treasury, and also put a greater pressure on government spending. So the net result is we're going to end up with a pretty significant deficit this financial year.
When Frydenberg and Morrison start talking about pulling levers, I mean, we've often heard of tax concessions in the company sector as being an aspiration. And I did speak to Josh Frydenberg only a week or so ago, and he did say you can't tax yourself into prosperity. Are you expecting any punitive taxation measures, or are you hoping that we can look at some sort of easing taxation?
Well, there's a couple of points there. We can't be taxing the productive sector of the economy, because that puts a dampener or a deterrent on that sector of economy. Now, it's been in the past, when we've looked at our company tax rates. Our company tax rates used to be in the high 40%. They were 36% under Peter Costello. He lowered them to 30%. So we've had basically 40 years of our company tax rate falling. But what's been surprising, as we've lowered that company tax rate, we've actually encouraged investment, and we've actually got more revenue flowing into government. So just because you ramp up the tax rates, especially on productive activity, doesn't mean you get more revenue. We have to be very careful. Sometimes you can get less revenue. So there's a very strong argument that we could actually lower our corporate tax rates down from the current 30% down to 25%, or even lower still, and actually get more government revenue. That's what's happened every single time in the past that we've lowered those tax rates. It's ended up with more government revenue, not less.
What about these border closures? There's, a very strong suggestion that they're unconstitutional. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it?
Look, I believe that these are, especially in Queensland, and you could blame the other states as well. You can blame Western Australia and South Australia. They're equally as guilty, but it affects Queensland more because at this time of year, Queensland get basically, they get more imports of tourists going into Queensland. When it's cold and wet and wintry in the southern states, many people move to Queensland to escape that cold. So this is a time Queensland needs those interstate tourists. Now, to close their borders down, firstly, I believe is against the Constitution. I think it's in violation of the Constitution. Our Constitution is very explicit. There are very few, exemptions for it that are all in the case law, not in the words. Now, when we've got, here in New South Wales today, we had not one single new case contracted of the coronavirus out of a population of 7.5 million. Australia-wide, it's less than 1 infection per every million people. And yet we still have these borders closed. Now, if it was just about the health of, yes, we've got to wait, until there's no cases Australia-wide. But what's not looked at, and what I think the Queensland Premier is guilty of failing to look at, is how much damage how much harm, the destruction of livelihood and businesses in that small business sector in the especially in Queensland term, is absolutely outrageous. To me, it just looks like a political stunt by the Labor Queensland Premier trying to sort of make out, oh, I'm keeping you safe, when she's actually doing significant and shocking damage to the livelihoods and lives of many people that have put their life savings into investing in the Queensland tourism sector.
Well said, Craig Kelly. Now, we're running out of time, but I just want your thoughts quickly on what's going on in the United States, the looting, the impact on businesses there.
Look, it's fair enough that people could get out and protest about some, what you saw of the police being overly aggressive and causing the death of that man when they arrested him. Against that background, also remember, there's something like 100 US police officers lose their lives every year in the line of duty. Being a police officer in the USA is not a job that I would want to do, but that's not saying any excuse. That officer did the wrong thing and he should face the full penalties under the law. But what we are now seeing are not people protesting about that. We are sort of seeing basically hooligans and thugs and left-wing rioters just rampaging places. Many of us have been to New York. To see Macy's there on Fifth Avenue having to be boarded up because of looters and rioters, and to see shopping malls or shopping strips like in Santa Monica, one of the most upmarket strips that you would ever find anywhere in the world, to see looters and rioters bashing down the windows there is just a shocking, shocking situation. And I think in this situation, President Trump was right. You just can't, if you're the president of your nation, you can't just stand back and watch these looters and rioters carry on and get away with what they are.
Craig Kelly, great to see you tonight. Thanks for joining us as always.
Thanks, Gleeso.